Hello besties and welcome to another Genshin theory! This week I want to go over two smaller theories. I'll put timestamps in the description for both of them in case you really want to check out just one. The Cataclysm is an elusive event in Teyvat's history despite being fairly recent. It only happened 500 years ago, yet the effects of it are basically non-existent except for the formation of the Abyss Order. But the Abyss Order doesn't affect everyone in Teyvat. For the most part, it's only a problem for adventurers and people who were there for the Cataclysm. But even then, I can't remember Zhongli or A ever talking about the Abyss Order, which is weird because they were definitely around when the organization formed. Regardless, the Cataclysm happened recently, but nobody knows anything about it. Think about real-life historical events that happened 500 years ago. We know that those things happened, but in Teyvat, that's not the case. You could argue that Teyvat's record-keeping is different than our own, so they potentially lost the Cataclysm somewhere in their accounts, but history from thousands of years ago is common knowledge. People know about the Archon War, they know about Old Mondstadt and the aristocracy, so how is it that such a significant event that changed Teyvat forever somehow slipped past everyone? I think our answer lies within what Zhongli told us at the end of his second story quest.
Surely you experienced the incident?
I cannot say.
Why? You can't even give us a thread of information? This is so important to us.
I understand. But I must apologize. This is my contract.
You mean another past grievance? Like the incident with Ejda? Too painful to tell.
It was signed before it all began. I have always honored the contract. And kept my silence.
How can you be like that?
You two are friends to me. I can assure it brings me no pleasure to disappoint you. But as the god of contracts, I cannot go back on my word.
For a long time, I've speculated that their refusal to tell us about Khaenri'ah was because of a non-disclosure agreement that included all of the Archons in Celestia, and while I think that's true, I don't know if that's the full truth. The NDA makes sense for the Archons in Celestia because they were directly involved in the Cataclysm. They were the supposed aggressors, but what about normal humans? We know that almost nobody survived the disaster, and those who did were turned into mostly non-verbal monsters of the Abyss. Zhongli is unable to tell us about Khaenri'ah because there would be consequences from Celestia if they did. I think the same thing can be said for those normal humans I mentioned earlier, even though they aren't included in the NDA. Celestia has set a precedent for violent behavior towards those they deem insubordinate. Think back to Salvin Dagnir and Skyfrost Nail. It wouldn't be uncharacteristic of the celestial gods to inexplicably kill anyone who spoke about Khaenri'ah regardless of whether or not they were even there for the Cataclysm. There is a huge flaw with this theory, though. Dainsleif was human before the Cataclysm, but was punished with immortality for his failure to protect Khaenri'ah. Dainsleif talks about Khaenri'ah constantly. It's basically his entire purpose in Genshin's main plot. Dainsleif is our main source of information on Khaenri'ah despite his insistence that he remembers nothing about the fallen nation. So he clearly knows that he's obligated to stay quiet about the incident because he feels the need to play dumb, but he doesn't actually do it. You could say that Dainsleif's immortality prevents him from being killed by the celestial gods, but we know it's possible for immortals to die. In Genshin, immortality isn't necessarily infinite. Even immortals have limited lifespans in extreme situations. The past Dendro Archon and Makoto died in Khaenri'ah despite being immortal Archons. If anyone would be able to evade death, you would think it would be them. But no, that isn't the case. Dainsleif somehow manages to stay alive while dodging Celestia's fatal punishment that inevitably awaits him. Compared to other immortals, Dainsleif is pretty young. Given his appearance, we can assume that he was a younger adult at the time of the Cataclysm. Dainsleif is not a god, so he doesn't have the ability to shapeshift. His appearance now is likely exactly how he looked when Khaenri'ah was destroyed. With that in mind, he's only a little over 500 years old. Comparatively, the oldest immortal we know, Zhongli, is 6,000 years old. Even though 500 years sounds like a long time, it really isn't in Teyvat's entire timeline. Given his relatively short lifespan so far, Dainsleif may not have been so adamant about avenging Khaenri'ah until recently. In my other theories about Dainsleif, I came to the conclusion that he is secretly working for the Abyss Order. The theory in this video works with or without that conclusion. If you agree that Dainsleif is a member of the Abyss Order pretending to work against them, then he was recently sent out on an undercover mission to manipulate us for the benefit of Khaenri'ah. Keep in mind that the Abyss Order is confirmed to be an extension of Khaenri'ah people and beliefs. In this case, the Abyss Traveler sends Dainsleif out to speak to us about the Cataclysm, possibly trying to recruit us to their side. We meet Dainsley fairly early in the game, so our sibling could have been waiting for us to make waves in Teyvat and then convert us to their cause, the cause that is directly related to Khaenri'ah's fall. But if Dainsley isn't working with the Abyss Order, then he must have had some recent revelation upon meeting us. To meet Dainsley in-game, you need to finish the Mondstadt and Liyue Archon quests first. In other words, you have to prove yourself as a worthy ally to Dainsley before he shows up in Mondstadt and silently beckons you to him. When he sees how capable we are, he decides that he can no longer remain silent about Khaenri'ah and he just has to tell us about it so we'll aid in his efforts. Another possibility is that Khaenri'ah is physically very far from Teyvat, so normal people may not know anything happened there, or they may not know it ever existed in the first place. The latter certainly seems to be true. I may be missing it, but I didn't remember a single NPC mentioning Khaenri'ah at all. But even if they don't know that Khaenri'ah existed or the exact details of the Cataclysm, they have to know that something huge happened 500 years ago. All of the Archons disappeared together. As far as we know, Mondstadt was the only country at the time that didn't have its Archon regularly around. Everyone in every other country would probably be really confused as to why their Archon was leaving with the other 6 to some undisclosed location for an unknown amount of time. When the Archons return, they have to have noticed a shift in their temperaments. The Tsaritsa was so traumatized by what she witnessed in Khaenri'ah that her entire personality changed. The Dendro Archon died and was replaced with someone else. The original Hydro Archon was also replaced at some point by the God of Justice. We don't know for sure if they died in Khaenri'ah, but it wouldn't surprise me if that was true. The Archons aren't the only organization to have changed since the Cataclysm. After Khaenri'ah's fall, the corrupted citizens formed the Abyss Order and spread out all across Teyvat, as well as all sorts of ruin automatons. There's no way that people didn't notice all these monsters and machines that weren't there before. We don't know when the Adventurers Guild was formed, so maybe there weren't as many adventurers 500 years ago as there are now, but surely they had to exist, even in small numbers. I have a hard time believing that normal people are unaware of the events 500 years ago. They don't need to know the specifics, but they definitely know that something significant happened. I'm honestly surprised that we haven't heard any NPCs directly mention something happening 500 years ago. But I could be wrong. It's hard to keep track of every NPC's line, so I might have missed that. But right now, I do believe that Celestia is killing people who talk about Khaenri'ah. To players who aren't super invested in Genshin lore, Osial may seem like a secondary antagonist exclusive to Liyue. The only time we ever actually see him in-game is at the end of Liyue's Archon quest, and we barely hear anything about him past that. The Osial boss fight is one of the few that we can't replay. The others I remember being the Abyss Herald and We Will Be Reunited and A in the Inazuma Arcana quests. I feel like a lot of us forget about Osial because we only ever see him in that boss fight. We see Abyss Heralds in Spiral Abyss regularly, and A is a playable character, so we're reminded of their presences often. But I believe that Osial is going to become an incredibly important character in the future. During We Will Be Reunited, we found out that the Abyss Order is planning to release Osial again and mechanize him in order to use him as a weapon. I don't know why we don't talk about that more. That's an insane thing that's just waiting to happen, especially now that the Abyss Order has the first Field Tiller's Eye. That's what they wanted it for in the first place. And Osial is the perfect person for the Abyss Order to use against the Archons in Celestia. He holds a personal grudge against Morax for thousands of years and didn't hesitate to attack Liyue Harbor again when Childe released him from Guyonstone Forest. We know that Osial hasn't moved on from Rold the Adventurer's Lost Diary. In it, he chronicles his adventures in Guyonstone Forest, including a disturbing night where he slept there. He writes, "I had the most awful night's sleep last night. I dreamt I was somewhere pitch black and damp. Suddenly I was a sea monster and my impaled body was being driven to the ocean floor by the Geo-Archon's polearm. I writhed around and clutched at the giant polearm made of rock, trying desperately to free myself, but it was wedged firmly in place. Each movement I made filled me with agony and with rage. Note to self, Guyonstone Forest is not a good place to spend the night." I'm almost AR 58 now, so I don't have a whole lot to do in Genshin right now. Sometimes I like to just walk around and talk to NPCs to see what their stories are. I was checking out the NPCs in Liyue Harbor and I came across 2 kids at Wanwen Bookhouse, Mu Chen and Gao Fei. They're talking about crafting some kind of waterproof mech suit for an undisclosed creature that could protect Liyue from the rest of Teyvat. This is what they say. "Metal fatigue is a fact you can't work around, though. This is an issue because you blindly insist that the super armored mechanoid must be reconfigurable. Stupid. If the super armored mechanoid isn't flexible enough, then it's just a sitting duck. Granted, the design ethos for this is to serve as the ultimate defensive superweapon, but ultimately seaworthiness and flight readiness are key functionalities that we cannot ignore. The only way this is ever going to act as a deterrent against people from nations trying to invade Liyue is if it had the actual capability to reach every corner of Teyvat. How about we switch up the design a little, separate the body from the movable components? By using discrete external components to achieve the functions of amphibious transportation and flight, we can bypass the issue of metal fatigue and negate the requirement for the reconfigurability at the structural level entirely. I like this train of thought, I do. It's just that this will limit the effective range for combat and the reconfiguration will be irreversible. Now this could just be a random joke by the writers, but I think this is foreshadowing. Waterproof mechanics would be important for however they're planning to enhance Osial because he's completely made of water. This is such a specific thing for it to just be a coincidence or a joke. I don't think these kids are part of the Abyss Order or anything, but I think we can take some serious information away from their plans. They mentioned wanting their super armored mechanoid to be able to function in and out of water, and I'm sure that's something the Abyss Order would want too. Osial is a living manifestation of water, so his range in combat is very limited. Not every country in Teyvat has access to the ocean where he currently is. Fontaine, for example, is completely landlocked despite being the nation of Hydro. To increase the efficacy of their living weapon, the Abyss Order needs Osial to survive outside of water. I think that at some point in the future, we'll see the Abyss Order succeed in mechanizing Osial and getting him on land. I can't believe last week I forgot to wish you guys luck on your Itto and Goro polls. I think I got cursed from not saying that because I couldn't manage to get Goro on my main. Thankfully, I got him on 2 of my ults, and I got Itto on 1 too. I'm not going to pull on this banner on my main anymore because I want to save for Yai and Heizo, but good luck to everyone wishing for Itto and Goro. I had a great time reading your theories last week, so I'll definitely do another video like that again. If you want to be included in that, join my Discord server. Link is in the description and pinned comment. Also, I wrote the background music in this video. I wrote it as an idea of what a character trailer or demo music for Vanessa would be like. If you want to listen to my other Genshin Impact theme songs, the link to my Soundcloud is also in the description. Thank you for liking, commenting, and subscribing, and I'll see you next time. Bye, besties!